Welcome back to Patman Garage. We are working on getting this sunroof rebuilt, and I ordered a kit from a website called Sunroof Doctor. Funny story about how I came across them. I was actually searching the part number I found on the original lifting arm that doesn't show up on Ford's catalog, and I ran across a Jaguar internet forum from 2013 and then they recommended Sunroof Doctor. So 12 years later, here we are trying to do the same thing. So we're going to jump into rebuilding this sunroof here. And we'll take a look and see what we actually have in the box. So this is just packing material. And then we have the first lift arm. Now this is the correct version. This is actually, it looks exactly like the factory one. Has the date codes on it and everything, but even has the provisions we talked about in the disassembly video for the extra attachment on the side. So that's sweet that we actually have the correct parts for that. These are the side pieces with all of the new track plastics. All again also look original. They got all the normal looking Ford stamping numbers on them. So this is pretty sweet little kit here. I'm surprised by that. And that is so that's going to be where the motor actually attaches to the mechanism attaches to the drive cable. Now, I'm guessing those are one side of the vehicle. I'm guessing all this is going to be the other side of the vehicle. I'm hoping that was intentional how they separated these out. We have some lubrication, I assume. Cool, or grease. A little cut and swab dabber thing. And I got some new rivets because we're going to have to drill out some rivets in the frame rail. And then finally we have a replacement motor because the internal of that's all broken, as we remember seeing as well. So looks like that's maybe the original manufacturer, maybe not with a Ford sticker on it, but original manufacturer. So pretty sweet little setup here for a couple $100. So we'll jump back onto the sunroof and get started on this. All right, so we got the instructions out, and it says we need to start by drilling out the 3 rivets on each rear corner. So I'm guessing that's going to be 1, 2, and 3. And then that will allow us to remove basically this end cap off of the actual frame rail. Once I get that off, then we can start removing stuff off the frame, and would also be a good time for me to go ahead and get this thing cleaned up for rebuilding it here. So I'm going to work on drilling these guys out, and probably going to go ahead and flip the assembly over just to make that a little bit easier, and then we'll see what that looks like. Alright, so we got the sunroof flipped over. This is going to be upside down in relation to how it would sit in the truck. So this would be the bottom side, and we're going to work on drilling out these rivets here that we talked about. And so we're going to drill out these 3 rivets on each side, and we'll work on pulling those end caps off carefully. Alright, so I randomly picked out a 15/64 drill bit, pretty close to a 1/4 inch. It seemed like about the right size. It's maybe a little bit larger than I really needed, but the rivets are actually spinning, so I'm going to grab them with some pliers from the bottom side, hold the head of the rivet, and then that way I can finish drilling through it. Alright, so assuming you were holding the bottom of the rivet here, then you'll end up with the top part, the ring, will come off on your drill bit. There you go. And then you want to stop drilling at that point because we've drilled through the interface between the two. And we can use the pliers and pull down on what's left of the rivet from underneath here. Again, this is all real time as you're holding it. You can just kind of wiggle, pull, and this should come right out. I say that, and then the one I'm trying to show you doesn't. So let me force this one out a little bit, and then we'll jump over to the other side over there. All right, I got the 3 rivets drilled out on each corner in the rear, and I went ahead and flipped this thing back right side up. So this is the top side or roof side. We're going to work on sliding those end caps off, cable guides, and then we'll start unloading the frame rail from there. All right, so to actually get the end of the trough or the gutter, whatever you want to call it, off of the frame rail, I just stuck a flathead screwdriver, because screwdrivers are not pry bars, and we're just going to gently twist here, and we can see it's starting to separate here. So we're just gonna be nice and easy with this thing and work our way off with it. I will probably step up to the next size screwdriver just to give me a little bit more twisting here. Not much more, but you can also see there's some sealant in here that is stretching. So I'm going to try not to clean that off because I don't know what that is or how we can duplicate that, but I assume that's intended not to allow water to leak out of the trough and down into the gutter, into the drain tubes. So when I clean, I will try not to clean that out, but we'll get the rest of this slid off, and the whole drive cable should be pulling out that's running along inside that frame rail here. So we'll get to pulling this out, see how this looks next. All right, so I've got the end cap pulled off. I still have the drive cable located inside the frame rail. As you can see, it kind of wants to hang, so I'm going to work on gently pulling continuously until we get the till we get this fully disassembled here. All right, so I got the end pieces, or the end caps, removed. Apparently the drive cable itself stayed in the sunroof. So we've got, those are just hanging now on both sides. So I'll figure out what it takes to get those out, but we're going to keep unloading stuff off this frame. I'm going to kind of work my way into the garage and kind of layers of stuff that's removed. That way I make sure I get everything put back on in the correct order. And if you watch my original diagnosis video, you'll remember that I talked about the purpose of this metal gutter tray. This guy will also need to get cleaned up pretty good. It's got a pretty good accumulation of dirt and dust on it. But I went ahead and pulled off my 2 Phillips screws, 1 on each side. We'll pull this guy and set it off to the side. And then, like I said, we'll continue to unload the sunroof tray here. So we should have these guide trays should be ready to slide out. And then, like I said, we'll keep going from there. All right, so I went ahead and disconnected my inner screw cover, and I disconnected the little coat hanger off of our location points here and here respectively. And then this is ready to slide out. So this is going to get replaced. We'll do the same thing on the other side, and we'll keep working on unloading this track here. All right, and next thing up is we're pushing the actual drive mechanism out. And as we push the drive mechanism out, that is also lengthening our cable on the downhill side down there. So we'll be ready to catch that all at once whenever this comes out the end of the track. All right, I got both sides completely unloaded here, and I actually got the sunshade part removed as well. I hung the last reinforcement bar off of the end of the table, and then I was able to press this guy down and deflect it, twist it enough where I could slide the sunshade out without hitting that, because it actually sits kind of like in here. So I wanted to pull that off only for the fact that I wanted to be able to take this thing out into the driveway and garden hose this thing and simple green it and get this thing really cleaned up well, since we have all the dirt, debris, leaves, sticks, all that stuff in here. And now that we have this back of this opened up, this will drain out real nicely. So we'll get this thing relocated out into the driveway and get the garden hose out, and we'll get this thing hosed down. I'm also going to attempt to clean some of my front wind deflector piece. If it looks like it doesn't clean up very well, then I will pull that off of the donor Harley sunshade, more than likely, but I don't exactly know how this thing is actually installed, so we may have to figure that out too. But for now, we're going to get this thing out and clean it up. All right, well, I got the sunroof mostly cleaned up. Still have a little bit of adhesive here and there in that front track. I was able to get the deflector off. There's the little limiting strap screws that pop up here. You take those off, then you can flip it 180 degrees, and then it just falls out of the little hook right here. So I will see if it's still worth trying to clean it or not. I got a lot of it off, but it's still real sticky. So we'll see what that ends up looking like long term. But we'll play with it a little bit here and see if we can get a little bit more off of it. This is the mass of what I've got pulled out of it. I don't know what this material was, but it's kind of a little bit clear, stretchy, really strange stuff. Definitely not automotive something, but it's sure definitely made a mess out of this. But we'll get this finished cleaning up. We're going to let it dry overnight, and then we'll resume in the tomorrow and get the tracks greased up and start reassembly. Well, believe it or not, that's actually the same piece. I got about 99% of the adhesives and stuff off of it. There's still a couple little spots I may go back and do a little bit more scrubbing on, but I did end up using Dawn and a stainless steel wool. And most of it came off pretty reasonably quick. I was afraid I was going to be too aggressive with the steel wool, but it actually worked out really nicely. I did another deep cleaning on the sunroof track using, again, the same thing, steel wool and Dawn, and we are squeaky clean now. So we're again going to let this dry overnight, and we'll pick up another day. Well, I really didn't expect that to come out nearly as clean as it did. So that is a win in my book. We still got a lot more cleaning to do and greasing it before we rebuild this thing, but overall very happy with tonight's work. All right, another day back out in the garage, and I'm really pleased with the way the sunroof turned out yesterday with all the scrubbing and cleaning. So we'll take a look and see what that looks like here. So sunroof track assembly looks really good. I mean, maybe one, nope, that's just dust. All that is looking really good shape here. On this front bar that I did some extra cleaning on, I've got one little spot here that's got some kind of weird, almost like a water spot issue on it. And then it's also on the bottom side below it. You can see there's just kind of a little bit of a hazy spot. So we'll maybe do a little bit of extra cleaning on that guy, but man, overall this thing doesn't even look like the same part. It's so much better. So we'll get that guy cleaned up a little bit, and we'll start loading the sunroof frame up and lubricating it. All right, so starting off with getting our wind deflector reinstalled here. We are going to get the wind deflector underneath these hooks like that, and then we'll just swing it over into position. And then we'll put our attaching little tethers here. We'll screw those down on each side. All right, so we have all the pieces laid out for the left side and the right side here. So we're going to start on the right side. And the right side pieces, we have our guide track we've already looked at several times here. And we have our slider that we've looked at as well. This is the main shuttle piece that actually attaches to our drive cable. When I pull the cable out of this side, this shuttle was still attached to the drive cable. They just slot in on the side, so you just kind of hold the cable and pry it open and it comes right out. And we'll need to make sure that the new one gets installed in the same location on the same piece here, like that. And then this is ready to get installed into the tray. But before that actually goes in, we'll put our front slider in. All right, so I took some of my grease cup here and used a little dabber. I used maybe 1/3 of the grease on this track. I can always add more afterwards, but I'm definitely going to be very liberal with it because the track was super dry after getting all that cleaned out. So I got my first slider put in, and then we are ready to grab our cable and our rear piece here, and this should just slot into, let's see here, I think it just slots in. Give me just a second here. All right, so I came in kind of in the middle here and just stabbed in sideways. This does have to be kind of an angle, and then the cable will be brought up to level once we start sliding in. So as you start pushing in, if it feels like it's binding or anything, you definitely want to stop and maybe readjust it or rearrange it a little bit. But we're going to work on getting this fed in here. All right, and I've got everything loaded in line here. And I think with the exception of this guy needs to go under the track, if I remember correctly here. So I may back up just a little bit to get that guy lined in there. But we should be able to be starting to push this thing front to back, or back to front, I should say. We should be getting pretty close to pushing this thing back to front here. All right, and we did finally get everything loaded in on this right-hand side. So we have the rear piece that's going to have that black gutter attached to it. This side cover just pops in and out of that round hole here. And we have our coat hanger piece attached to our front slider. Front slider is sandwiched down on top of our wind deflector, so it has to be all the way forward. And yeah, we're in really good shape. So I should be ready to, hopefully didn't go too far ahead of myself, but I want to put the sunshade back in this thing as well now that I've got the track all cleaned up. So I'm going to do just a little light greasing here on the interface where the sunshade will ride, and we'll get hopefully won't have to take this side back apart now that we need to put the sunshade back in it. Successfully got the cover reloaded back into the sunshade back into the tracks. I did it by myself this time. I ended up just sliding that rear cross member off the table, and then I put some weight on this front side just to keep it from teeter-tottering, and I was able to put it in by myself. So now we'll get the oh, actually, before I finish that train of thought, the sunshade, ooh, I missed a corner in the rear, it looks like. I have to go back and do that. But the sunshade is wrapped in fabric on that track, so I don't really think it actually needs any lubrication on it. Anyways, we'll get the sunshade fixed, and then we'll load up the driver's side track here. I got the driver's side completely loaded out, and I got my gutter tray back in here. I did get my sunshade fixed as well. Not all in that order, but you get the idea. Did want to give you a word of caution. When you are pushing the new pieces into the tray, watch out for this corner, because I annihilated my thumb and fingernail. Broke my fingernail with just a corner of it, and this corner is super sharp. So just be careful. So with the sunroof assembly being fully built out, we can work on putting our metal pipes back in on the sides, which is our rear gutter caps, or whatever you want to call those, that we pulled the rivet or drilled the rivets out of those. So we'll have to line the cables back up into their respective tubes as we get this thing reassembled here. All right, and I can't tell you how many times I've told you on this channel before, anytime you're bolting down an assembly, always put all the bolts in the holes before you thread or before you tighten anything down. We're going to do the same thing with the rivets. We are going to install our rivets through the frame into our rear cup. Before we tighten any of these down, we're going to make sure all three of them are on there, and that way we can ensure that it will still be lined up by the time we get this thing done. We're going to use the blue point riveter here, and we just go all the way on with it, and we give it a good squeeze, and then we release and give one more good squeeze, and that usually is enough. Sometimes it takes a third pull. And then the anvil breaks off the end of the rivet, and then we got to fish out the end piece here. Sometimes just tapping on the ground it'll come out like that, and then we're ready to rivet the other two on here. For whatever reason, my kit came with 7 rivets. I already did the other side and have one left over. So nice that they give you a little bit extra hardware. It kind of feels like I'm building Legos if they give you spare parts, but if you know, you know. All right, so now that we got the rivets in the frame, we are wrapping up on this sunroof install or rebuild here. So we need to still install the glass, but other than that, we are in good shape here. And I'll probably go ahead and install the motor and just kind of wind it by hand just to make sure everything mechanically moves like I expect it will before I actually get it all the way back into the truck. So better to be surprised while we still have access to it than bolt it in and then try it out for the first time. So we'll give this a quick install here on the motor, and then we'll see how this operates. All right, so we have our cable guides floating underneath the sunroof motor bracket, and we'll get our motor set in position as well. Now, when we actually go to install this here, our teeth should be engaging on our drive mechanism. Now, this is why it was super important to make sure we got those to get those cables all the way forward so that they're synced up left to right. So we're going to get this guy installed here, and then we can wind this thing manually just to make sure everything operates. All right, so I got the glass all cleaned up. I got a brand new seal installed on the glass, and I went ahead and function tested the sunroof. It does tilt correctly and then suck down and then pull back. So just need to close it now. But we should be ready to get this thing finally installed. So I'm going to show you real quick what that function looks like here outside the truck. All right, so again, we have our Allen on the motor here, and we're just going to run this ratchet down. Now, part of the instructions, we are not supposed to run power to the motor with an unplug, but we're allowed to run the ratchet on it. And you can see our sunshade starting to close back towards the closed position a little bit. And right there, the wind deflector started getting pulled down as well. Apologies, the ratchet came out. So the sunshade gets tucked in there, and we should be just about ready to start lifting back up to body line. All right, we're coming up to body line there, and then we're going to continue driving forward, and now we're tilting, still driving forward, and we are at full tilt. So function tested the entire sunroof assembly here. I'm going backwards now. We are tilting back down. And then we're closed, and then we come back down to go under the roof line. We can come out with it, and as you can see, our wind deflector will pop up here as the glass retracts. Wind deflector is deployed, and so on and so forth. You get the idea. So now we just need to do all the work to put this truck back together. But I'm very, very, very pleased with this rebuild process. This took a long time of sourcing parts and finding free time to work on it, but very happy with this evening's results. So I will see y'all back in the truck, and we'll get this thing installed here shortly. All right, so we finally got the sunroof completely rebuilt, and we're ready to install it. So we'll get the tarp situation removed now that we've got the cover off the truck, and we'll get started on getting this sunroof reinstalled here. Welcome back to Patman Garage. We are back at working on the Blackwood again. We got the sunroof rebuilt, and we're going to work on getting the sunroof now installed on the truck. So I already got the car cover off, and we'll work on getting the tarp situation removed and get this sunroof back in the truck and see if it works electrically now. All right, so the long-term setup I had here, I had the tarp tucked into the doors and closed the doors. That way the tarp would stay attached to the truck. If the cover moved or blew off, underneath the cover I have a packing blanket just to help. Hold on. All right. Under the cover I have a packing blanket just to help distribute some of the forces that we have in case there was some storm damage. And then below that I've got a thick layer of cardboard, and that was just covering up my hole here. And then I did the same thing on the back glass. I did, since we still have the back glass out, I made a piece of cardboard that covers where the window is, and then I ran the tarp over the cardboard, under the cardboard, and that way anything that was on it was draining into the gap between the bed, and that way we weren't losing water into the cab. So that was the setup with the sunroof and the back glass removed for over a month in the middle of springtime in Texas. So hopefully we'll at least get the sunroof back together and reinstalled this evening is the plan. Probably not going to finish the back glass today, but we at least got a pretty good head start here on this thing. Actually forgot I even did it this way. I actually made the back glass covering actually tuck under the roof piece, so these are two separate pieces of cardboard here. That also allowed me to make sure that the back glass piece didn't fall down into the cab as well. So like I said, we're gonna get this all put away for now, and then we'll get the sunroof reinstalled and probably have to put some of this back on just to cover up the back window again. So before we actually install the glass or a sunroof assembly into the truck, we do need to put the memory module back on the sunroof assembly. So I will need to, looks like I got a little zip tie here I need to cut off, and then we'll unplug this guy and plug it into our new motor, and then we can reinstall this. We're ready to do that before we get all the way back into the truck. Well, the verdict is the sunroof moves under its own power. The other verdict is the adjustment's a little bit off. So I was trying to get it in the upright position or closed position, and I was pinching pretty hard here, and I was actually kind of rolling the seal a little bit. So I need to scoot the glass forward. I need to scoot the glass forward on the track a little bit. That should help relieve that tension there. So we'll pop the other side off here. I already got this pinch protection cover removed, and you can see our witness marks how far off we are from where the glass used to sit. So I'm going to loosen the bolts up here, and we'll try to get this glass to scoot forward a little bit. Alright, so let's go ahead and run this thing one more time. We are doing a one-touch feature. So automatically opens after it gets out of that first initial, you have to hold it long enough to get out of that tilt down function, and then it'll automatic from there. And then we're going to go back on or closed, holding the button down. And releasing the button and then pressing one more time, and that closes it. And then another press will do the tilt function, although honestly that really doesn't tilt a whole lot, so kind of surprised by that. If yours tilts more than that, let me know. Because I feel like it probably should tilt a little higher than that, but maybe I'm just overthinking it, I guess. But yep, so there's the functionality of it. We can then go back down with it. And like I said, everything is fitting really nicely here. So I'm really happy with how that turned out, and we'll work on getting the headliner put back in next. Well, I was doing a little bit more research to figure out if that tilt operation was actually correct or not, or if I need to try to retime the motor. And then the battery died on the truck, so I had to step up to the larger charger and up the amperage by quite a bit. Of after having it with ignition on for, I don't know, maybe 45 minutes or so, and running that motor back and forth a bunch, it tanked the battery voltage. So we will let this hurry up and wait and get this thing charged back to life, and then we will resume our testing. So I'm really glad that the kit actually came with instructions. Let me show you what's going on with this motor real quick and how to fix this problem of retiming it. All right, so right here, when the motor is running, there's a band that passes around inside this motor, and you'll see it. There's a little pointer on there, and it's going to point to when the motor is closed. So right now that the glass is in the closed position, if I run this thing in the open direction here, you can see that pointer move there a little bit, and then it went past. So that is where the motor is supposed to be when we're in the closed position, which is why the motor stops in that position. Then if we look, our glass is not actually in the closed position. So what I'll need to do is close the glass into the closed position, then take the motor off, and then have the motor rotate until we're in the correct position, and then reinstall the motor onto the linkage. And that should get us where we need to be. So the verdict after retiming the motor is we got quite a bit more lift on the tilt, which is good. And our one-touch operation is good to close there, and that is one-touch opening. So the one-touch open actually works correctly now because we have retimed the motor into the correct position. And there you have it.